Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
In the intro, Chloe proposed it.
Every time we hear the intro of Jesse's voice, I mean, even he's sick of it at this point, right, Jesse?
Right,
you know
Jesse?
you are. So we want to know if people love the intro still, or if they're starting to be like, okay, maybe it should be somebody other than Jesse saying, "Welcome to the show."
Uh-oh, no audio. Queen.
Jesse,
First of all, so nice. Okay,
Jesse is trying to sabotage
he's
our show.
silencing women's voices. Okay, we're off to a great start.
Wow. Okay, so what we were saying is we need to know if people are enjoying the intro still, or if they're sick of hearing Jesse's voice. He didn't want anybody to hear that, and that's why he didn't turn the audio on.
There's so much to consider for what we're going to replace the introduction with instead of Jesse's voice.
Yes.
And I think off the top, a bongo anthem might be just what Guerrilla Sports needs.
So
All right,
true.
we're going around the league today, diving into sights and sounds, different things that have been happening over the last week or so. And one of the first things we wanted to talk about, last Thursday, the Ducks won 4-1, and it came with a very interesting intermission interview from Trevor Zegras. They started that game pretty slow, despite eventually winning it. And it ended up being one of their first 30-plus shots games in 10 games since earlier this month. So it was a really great game from Anaheim, but it didn't start off the way that they wanted. They needed to recover from the bongo anthem.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of you have heard the bongo anthem, but we're going to show it to you.
Here it is.
How do you guys turn it into more of an open ice skating rush type of game?
I think the bongo anthem threw us off a little bit in the first, but once we recovered from that, we were back to our game, which was good.
You know, the interesting...
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed?
So, a lot to consider.
I love it. I love it so much.
I clearly think the Ducks loved it too. They turned around, won 4-1 over the Nashville Predators, and they've since played the Hurricanes and they lost 5-2. And there's one thing missing from the Hurricanes Ducks game, and that's a bongo anthem.
Yeah. I mean, he said it threw them off, and then they kind of got back to their game. I think that's their new secret weapon.
I think it's the new secret weapon. Alyssa says maybe the bongo anthem is what gave them the strength to win. Has he even considered this possibility?
No, this is a really good question, because I need to know if he still feels scarred from it after winning.
Right? Or does he even revisit it maybe?
Right.
Just listens to it pre-game, or is considering it now that in the absence of the anthem,
Yes.
they didn't do very good. So I hope that he's taking that into consideration, that it could be the pre-game pump-up music that the Anaheim Ducks have been missing this whole season.
I love when players say things like this. That's just absolutely hilarious. I don't know if it's a lack of media training. I still think that Trevor Zegras is media trained, but these small moments where you can actually see their personality come out, I think it's just so funny.
And kind of an unexpected place too. You see intermission interviews. It's something I think about a lot as a reporter who has enjoyed doing an intermission interview before. I think it's a really cool opportunity, but I hear mixed reactions from the people about what you actually get out of intermission interviews.
Yeah.
It's the same canned response every time. What's the point, right? Well, this is why.
This is
Okay,
why.
we gave Trevor a platform to talk about the bongo anthem, and it was candid and unfiltered. And I love that. And if we remove intermission interviews, we might not have known it.
Exactly. And I don't know, I think this was a post-game availability,
Oh,
but with
dang.
Kale, what?
Oh, I thought
This one?
Trevor
Oh no.
Zegras was post game. I'm not sure now.
I think his was intermission.
Perfect.
But I'm thinking of when Kale did post game. I'm not sure who it was with, and then Taves was in the background,
With
like over his shoulder, and stuff like that. It's just so funny. We can never get rid of that kind of stuff. This is why you need media.
They'll surprise
Right?
you, right? The players will surprise you, and you just need media there to document it at every turn because you never know when you're going to get a little personality out of these guys. That was sort of the fun around the league topic. We have another fun one later in the show. Some of you have already weighed in on goalie fights, but before we get to the goalie fights, I wanted to check in on the New York Rangers. Obviously, the Avs benefit from a trade with the Rangers, who have been struggling this season, brings about Ryan Lindgren, who, with some injuries to the Avs back end right now, he's come up huge in a big way when the Avs have needed some depth to step up. Lindgren, a guy who played top pair minutes in New York, absorbing second line minutes very solidly here in Colorado, seems to be doing pretty great. But New York, on the other hand, has continued to slide and struggle. And it's not strictly just because of this one trade. This team has struggled on the whole. They fell just out of a wild card spot. They're 3-5-2 in their last 10. And Montreal, the team that holds that wild card spot in the East, has games in hand over them. So they're only a point out, but it's just not looking great for them right now. And a lot of these comments I'm going to talk about were sort of prompted by this game that put them out of that wild card positioning. It was the March 18th game against Calgary. They end up losing 2-1, and it was one of their worst games of the season. They were outshot 35-13. That's just a really flat effort across the board. Adam Fox, Peter Baugh reported on this like a day later at practice or so, talked a little bit about the Lindgren trade specifically. He said, "It was obviously tough. Someone I played with pretty much my whole NHL career. Kind of weird timing. I was out, so I'm kind of adjusting to it now. Definitely miss having him around the room. Some of that is on us too. I'm sure if we had a better record and more of a push, he'd still be here." And I want to talk about that. And I also want to add Mika Zibanejad's comments post-game after that loss. It's frustrating, really frustrating. I don't care if we play like that and we win. If we lose and we play like that, it's not acceptable. Both these comments, kind of tough to have that coming out of the locker room. It doesn't together point to a room that's very united or very hopeful about the direction of the team. Wait, I didn't know we had this.
expecting that.
That's amazing. Dun dun.
Ba-bum.
Things are not going great for the New York Rangers. The Adam Fox comment separately, I revel in it a little bit. Not that he is missing his teammate, but more so the value of Lindgren.
Yeah.
I think from the Avs side of it, we're seeing what he can add to the back end in his experience and the way in which he can be responsible in his own end. He also just helps to stabilize a back end. And I know that he was overused in his role in New York. And so maybe they didn't get to benefit from that stabilizing factor at the end of his time there. But, you know, there are past seasons with Lindgren, even analytically, where he has struggled, that his compete and his battle as a teammate makes players like Adam Fox, who played alongside him, miss what he brought to the lineup.
And I think it's hard, especially with Fox and Lindgren. They played together for quite a long time. It was 5 or 6 seasons, I think. And I think having that consistency in the NHL is a rare thing to have.
Yeah.
So when you take that away and you lose that stability, you know, at this point, I think Adam Fox looks a little bit worse than he did playing with Lindgren, because when you lose a key piece of your back end like that, it's gonna affect your team. And I like, are the Rangers full rebuild mode? Or when are they gonna realize that or start moving towards that.
It's kind of crazy because this is a team that was making competitive playoff pushes the last 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And
Last year
so
especially.
I don't know why they fell off quite as hard as they
So
did.
fast, yeah.
I think without being in that room, it feels like the thing that we talk about being present in Colorado's locker room that is almost the secret weapon. And it's easy. I have a bias, right? I'm not in the Dallas locker room. I'm not in the New York locker room. And so it's easy for me to feel like there's just something in the core that has won it here in Colorado, and the type of competitors that they are, because it's pretty intense. Who are we kidding? We know what Nathan MacKinnon is.
Yeah.
That I think separates from teams that have good players. You know, Mika Zibanejad, an elite player. And New York, great special teams, one of the best goaltenders in the league. Even with those pieces, though, it still takes leadership in addition to a Nathan MacKinnon, but going back to the cup-winning year, and Andrew Cogliano.
Yeah.
And I think those types of leaders are understated because it's not just that now at this point they've been there, but not until 2022. They had to experience a lot of adversity together. They grew together as teammates. I think that's why the continuity with like Adam Fox having played with Lindgren and losing that, like you said, is really challenging. I'm just not sure then in the New York locker room, for example, who that type of leader is anymore. And you know, who the Nathan MacKinnon equivalent is. And at the time, the Landeskog, right? Like the Avs in 2022 had a Landeskog, and there are just not many leaders as complete as what Gabriel Landeskog is. And so I think the Avs have certainly felt his absence these last couple of seasons. They are a similar situation to New York and having really strong players still, but you see how the leadership group really rounds itself out with what it's made up of here in Colorado. That's to me, just looking at New York, the issue is they just don't have that special type of leader to help rally the group, because the morale got low this season and it stayed low. There just wasn't that person that could help bring them back up together. And I worry about that a little bit with Dallas as well. And so that's what I'm looking at, where things have gone so wrong for New York, because there's still pieces you can build around to compete. So I don't think, you know, they're quite in the rebuild territory yet, but they're going to have to replenish where they can first and foremost. And I know that that's sort of why they move on from Trouba. It's like to create cap space to extend Shesterkin. And so they're still kind of in this tough place with the cap going up. Maybe they can round out their roster in the coming seasons, but they got to address the culture and morale issue first.
Yeah. It just seems like with all the trades that they made this season that they're moving towards rebuilding. Like you don't go and trade your captain if that's not your goal in the end. But I do think losing Lindgren was a big loss for them and a huge plus for Colorado. And what I love about him is that he's kind of like a keep his head down and do his thing.
Yeah.
But also like the presence that he brings. Like I think you guys talked about it on your show with him and Sam Malinsky and kind of how they talk about each other. And Malinsky has Lindgren to look up to.
Yeah.
And I love that.
I look at even when Erik Johnson left after the cup win, there was a hole that was left in the locker room. And I think similar to a Lindgren, having this guy who's been there for a long time and has sort of grown that you can look up to, whether you're a young defenseman looking up to Erik Johnson. I think just generally other young players looked up to Erik Johnson. And similarly for Fox, I think he valued Lindgren and his experience and getting to grow together as teammates. That is difficult to replace, and it's hard. It's the nature of the business. There's turnover. Teammates don't get to play together forever, but I think that is why Erik Johnson's back on this team right now.
Yeah. One of the things when you were talking about what Fox had said after they traded him, you know, like the stereotypical thing that we always hear players say is, well, it sucks, but that's just the business side of hockey.
Right.
That was not something that he said. And I think not saying that, you can tell that how much of a loss it was for them, because it wasn't, you know, it wasn't like, well, it's the business side. It's like, no, we lost a key player to this team, to our back end that I really, really enjoyed playing with.
Yeah. I look at them giving Keaton Middleton the big hat for stepping up and fighting in Montreal, and I look at the value that a player like Lindgren brought to New York, that it maybe isn't always sexy. And honestly, we had this conversation with big guy Curtis McDermott in the Cup. Like, what is this guy doing on this team? He plays 4 minutes a night. What's the deal here? But there's just a type of player that adds to the locker room in ways that fans maybe don't fully appreciate, but players do.
Yeah.
And that matters the most at the end of the day. And I'm not comparing Lindgren to Curtis McDermott. I just think we can get
Did everybody
carried
hear
away.
that? Did everybody hear Meghan just compare them?
Gabriel Landeskog's returning as a defenseman.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. Tonight, right?
Tonight.
Right.
Surprise. There's a lot to get carried away. Speaking of getting carried away, I think we get lost in the analytics sometimes, especially measuring defensemen of all things. And I think we lose sight of the parts of their game that are measured in a very different way in how they make their teammates feel on the ice, and how they, like a Lindgren is a spark plug in, just because he's such a competitor and battles for his teammates, it just kind of makes everybody around him want to match that. And we've talked about Scott Wedgwood in that way. And that is so valuable. I think that's the whole, that an Adam Fox is feeling right now. And I just wanted to give Ryan Lindgren a little bit of love.
Yeah, I love that. You don't need to be a good defenseman. You don't need to score. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of people look at with defensemen is, oh my gosh, well, Cale Makar has this many points. Yes, he's a great, great player. He could probably be a forward if he wanted to. But he's a defenseman. Let's look at things that defensemen do and not focus it on how many goals they score. Assists does make sense, but when you're looking at it, you want to look at like the grit of them. I think that's a really, really big part of being a defenseman, and I think that's what Lindgren brings. That's what Keaton Middleton brings, and that's stuff that people don't really pay attention to.
Energy and vibes matter, and that's why Zibanejad's comments, I don't care if we play like that and we win. If we lose and we play like that, it's not acceptable. Now, I want to give him some benefit of the doubt that this isn't exactly what he meant to say, but I also can really only take it at face value. Yeah. That wouldn't have been acceptable if they did win and played like that in Colorado, for example.
Exactly.
There are games, like, I don't know if I'm going too far back into it, but Pittsburgh game springs to mind as one that they won. They did not like the result or the process, I should say. They liked the result. They didn't like the process. And I think that is what separates the Avs in this conversation from a team like New York. It's a winning mentality and the process matters. And so you might get the winning result. But when I say winning mentality, I don't just mean the W in the column. I mean the process too. You want to win the process side of the game.
Yeah.
And so I just am alarmed by Zibanejad's comments. I don't think that would have been an acceptable process, even with a winning result.
And was that game when they went into overtime and Taves had the game-winning goal?
Let me see the Pittsburgh one, because
I remember it was
back.
Taves talking, and he was the one that had said
that.
Right?
That was
what
that
game
wasn't
was
the
that?
Pittsburgh game, but you're exactly right.
Mhm.
There was an overtime win.
Yes.
Taves that he did not like.
Shoot.
Don't worry, we're gonna find it.
So I think it's because they were up, and then whoever they were playing had come back, and then they went into overtime, similar to Montreal, but
that was Rangers.
It was Rangers.
Yes,
interesting.
That's funny, and they hated it.
Yeah, they hated it. I mean, I think everybody was just excited that they had won, but you look at the locker room video from that and the things that Taves was saying. He had a straight face the entire time. He just had a game-winning goal in overtime, and he was like, yeah, sure, I scored that game-winning goal in overtime. It shouldn't have even gotten that far. Like, our entire play today was unacceptable.
Yeah.
Bednar said the same thing about it too. And that's why I love the mentality in Colorado versus other teams, because maybe that wasn't what he meant to say, was it would be okay if we played that way and won, but you would never hear a player even come close to saying that in Colorado.
No, they're critical even when they win if they don't like how they played. And I think good teams have to be critical even in wins. And so I like too, Jared Bednar has talked about how he doesn't just evaluate his team off of results. He evaluates every game, the process. And so there have been games they've lost where he has been defensive of the process,
Yeah.
like I can affirm that they did some things right in this way, and so I'm not going to come down totally hard on them.
Mhm.
And I think that's just as important too. So
Yeah.
things are pretty bad in New York. Moving over to New Jersey.
Woo!
Another defenseman caught in the crosshairs of some tough criticism. Another defenseman, too, who was once a pretty formidable shutdown D in this league, has had maybe a little bit of a tough year. The New Jersey Devils lost 3-2 in the shootout to Ottawa earlier, March 22nd, this past Saturday. And Sheldon Keefe cut off a question in the postgame with a pretty tough tone after the Devils fell to the Senators. He was being asked about Kovacevic's comments in his own postgame. He had talked about how they have a pretty home-heavy schedule. This was kind of the start of this homestand. And the rest of the way, they got to make it a hard place to play and a hard place to be beat. And the results were tough in this game, but we're in a fight here, and we're not going to back down. When Sheldon Keefe was asked about it, he just said Kovacevic needs to play better. That
Yeah.
would help. And he's since kind of thrown some water on it with positive post-game comments after a shootout win over Vancouver more recently. And he kind of just said, I thought Kovacevic's play was fine. So I wouldn't say he walked it back. I just think that it's been passed now with a little bit of positivity that game by game he's evaluating this performance differently. But it stood out to me having a coach call out a player so harshly, so specifically, in contrast to how we've seen Jared Bednar, who has also been critical of player performances. I think there's a huge difference, though, in how Bednar has criticized his players. I think that he's been more tactful in how he's done it.
Yeah. I think when you're looking at these two different coaches, when you start talking about a player and how they need to be better, you should feel a responsibility as a coach to, like, that's partly because of you, because of the way that you coach. You have to take some responsibility for a player not playing the way that you want him to play. But him just saying, he needs to play better and that will help, I just think it's a really passive-aggressive way to call somebody out.
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair. And, when we hear Bednar being critical, he's good at saying what the player's issues are instead of just saying he needs to play better. He'll say it in a way where he doesn't want to put somebody on the spot, but he'll say, maybe here's where they're struggling, here's where they're doing well, here's where they need to get better, we're working on this, we're doing this and this and this. And I think that's such a better way of going about something like that, because you get a lot, media can be critical, fans can be critical. You don't need your coach to be critical of you too. You want to hear, here's what I think you're struggling with and what you can do better, instead of hearing him say he just needs to be better, period.
Yeah, because I think we've seen this with Jared Bednar and players too, that especially when you respect your players, and this is a seasoned player in the league, they know when they've done something wrong. And so in Kovacevic's case, he had taken 3 penalties in that game. The kill was perfect. That wasn't necessarily the issue, but the lack of discipline and putting your team at a disadvantage is obviously a problem. Keyword being obviously. It's one of those things where Kovacevic's comments about how to tackle the rest of the homestand and wanting to be tougher to play against, it's really inoffensive.
Yeah.
And so for Sheldon Keefe to make that personal to the player again, who can absolutely warrant a talking to for taking 3 penalties, but to call it out in the postgame, something that's so obvious, it feels like a lack of discipline or restraint on behalf of Keefe to not hold his tongue a little bit more in that setting and save it for behind closed doors. And there's a strategy there, like maybe putting something in front of the media can be what lights a fire under his butt. Because I do think sometimes Bednar utilizes that strategy too, of intentionally talking about something in the media because he knows it gets back to his players in a different way. Like, I kind of remember this with Ryan Johansson here in Colorado. And Jared Bednar would be pretty, for him, candid. Like, it's direct for Jared Bednar about the usage of Ryan Johansson compared to at the time Ross Colton being
Yeah.
elevated in the lineup, it was
Mhm.
pretty clear how Jared Bednar was feeling about Ryan Johansson's play without just fully personally attacking him in a postgame.
Yeah. We should actually compare this to Bednar talking about Georgiev, because you can see when there were a lot of games when it was pretty clear that Georgie was the reason that they had lost that game. I'm putting that in quotes because that's not really the case, but in some cases it was. And Bednar never said anything that critical of him, He never called him out like that. He knew that there was a lot that he needed to work on, but he never said, Georgie needs to be better, period. He always trusted him, and he always said, he's our number one guy. We're sticking with him because he's our guy. And that, I don't know if it gave Georgie confidence, but I hope it did a little bit, because you have a coach that trusts you and wants you to play and wants you to be involved and just wants you to get better and sees that you are struggling in these situations and won't put the entire game on you.
I think it is interesting to compare it to Georgiev, because the closest we'd get to criticism would be Jared Bednar pretty fairly, goal by goal, saying, yeah, I bet he wishes he had that one, or we need a save.
Right.
There were some moments where you'd see a little frustration creep in. We need a save. But it was still met with a lot of certainty around Georgiev being the starter for most of that time. There were periods where he wouldn't say with as much certainty, because Anunen was kind of battling with him for starts at that point. But when Georgiev would string together a few good games, Jared Bednar would swoop back in and make sure to say that Georgiev was the starter. And similarly, when Georgiev did something that was obviously, objectively bad, like slamming his stick or hitting Sam Malinsky,
right,
he would still address the media by saying, it's not okay. It's something we'll talk to him about. That's it.
right.
The conversation happens behind closed doors.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of the difference. There's that restraint of recognizing you can condemn the behavior publicly, but keep it short, keep it sweet, and kind of neutral, and then take it to the player and address it in-house.
Yeah, you're giving media and fans ammunition at this
Totally.
point. And that's why Bednar doesn't do that. Maybe there's a few times where he has, good quotes and stuff like that, or he says something that usually coaches wouldn't say. But that, this kind of goes back to media training and Trevor Zegras. But
because you like a little bit of unfiltered access from players and coaches.
Yes. And Bednar shows you his personality, but he doesn't give you those bites.
I love you're saying this way better. There is so much more control over what he's saying. He's telling you what he wants you to know.
Right.
And nothing more.
Yeah. And he won't, what I was going to say, restrain. Damn it. This is, what's the word that we were going over?
Repel.
Repel.
And then I just started saying lowered because I didn't feel confident that was the right word. No, I understand exactly what's happened.
Gosh, I can't. Okay, well, he doesn't ever go away from that. He knows what he wants to say, and regardless of the questions that media may ask him or people's reactions to different things, he's never going to. I don't think he shows that frustration. I don't think going into it that he's gonna strain from something that he knew he was going to say. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
No, I think you are.
I mean?
He's very calculated in what he'll tell you.
Right.
And that's why, too, there have been things that I've gone back, like a piece of news will be revealed. Someone's in the lineup or this player's being elevated over this guy. And you can always or almost always trace it back to something Jared Bednar has actually already told you. And you just have to really take him pretty literally. He's very honest. He says what he means. And he's so smart. So there's so much information in what he's telling you that you just need to listen. And he's shared everything that he wants to and nothing more.
Yeah.
And someone in the comments, Ostera, Conrad. The problem with Keefe's comment is that it tells the media that he'll bite on any passing comment taken out of context.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference is you could bait Keefe in that moment to saying something that he didn't plan on saying, whereas I think Bednar only says what he plans on saying.
Yeah.
And he says what he means, because, sometimes he will be a little bit critical of a player's performance, like when Josh Manson had been struggling a little bit coming back from injury. He was quick to answer honestly that he didn't feel it was because of the injury he was struggling and that he wasn't making good decisions.
Yeah.
And that was that. Josh Manson, continued to struggle with injury a little bit, but I do think his play turned around a little bit after that as well and eliminated some of those mistakes. And that's where I think there is the intention of bringing things to the media on purpose, sometimes knowing full well it does get back to the players.
Yeah. I even think about that with Sam Malinsky and everything that's happened with that, and
Absolutely.
how, he had kind of fallen off, and Bednar had talked about it, but maybe he was scratched a few nights, but Bednar was consistent with him, and now he's shown a lot of progress since the break too.
Yeah. Casey Middlestat, another one that is an example of someone he tried to uplift in media every opportunity he could, while still answering honestly about the aspects of his game that have struggled. He was pretty candid too, when it had reached a point of Casey Middlestat has the information that he needs. It's now a matter of Casey Middlestat being able to turn this around.
Yeah.
And I know it didn't end great for Middlestat in Colorado, but I do think Bednar recognized that he was trying to get things back on track. And so there wasn't going to be any positive benefit from him just dragging him through the mud with media.
Yeah. There's a comment in here too from the same person, Ostera, and it says, I've long said Bednar is the only coach who could properly handle the Toronto media. I've heard a lot about the Toronto media. Have you heard this kind of stuff?
Yes, I have. Honestly, I feel like a couple of the Canadian markets have a really different media landscape than what we're dealing with in Colorado.
I need to know what it is about it, because I've only seen, comments from people saying that they don't ask the right questions, which is consistent with everybody that works in media.
No, it's true.
So I need to know what it is about Toronto media, because I've heard so much about this.
Is Jesse coming in to weigh in on Toronto media?
Oh my God, yay!
Sorry.
Oh my God,
Hey, here's a
special
guy
guest.
who was just in Toronto.
Yeah, well, so and that was why I wanted to come out, because you do hear a lot about it, and it's hypercritical all the time. But we were just there, earlier last week, not earlier this week, last week.
You were there yesterday?
And we were there earlier this week.
There right now.
Yeah, this is actually just a
Hologram.
hologram. Yeah, this is just a projection. No, but if you remember, Jared's morning skate availability went for like 11 minutes in a media scrum. And I mean,
on the road, and Corey and I were the ones who were there, and like we were having a hard time getting questions, to the point where we actually had to have Jared pulled aside after for us to get a couple lineup updates, because the questions were just, I mean, it was nonstop. And I mean, they were going back to the Miko trade stuff from before that. Like they were digging into everything. They just want to know everything. And it was similar in Montreal, but it was, I mean, there was probably 20, 25 people in Jared Bednar's just morning skate scrum on a Wednesday morning. And it was just, it's just crazy. And it's just a little bit different, but they want to know everything. Like there's nothing that you and I joke all the time, like, I don't want to ask them that. It's a practice question.
Right. No shame. They just like, nope, I got a question and I'm asking you. Yeah.
I've gotten every second question.
Right.
They do the same thing with the players though.
Oh yeah. Charlie Coyle, I think, spoke for close to 15 minutes in the locker room in Toronto. Yep.
Brandon Carlo rematch.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, the fact that they kept him that long, and I mean, they were asking about every single, like, individual players. Tell us about this guy. What about this guy? Tell us about this. Kale, a big scrum walked up to him, and they were like, "Hey, you're on the other side now. Last time we saw you, you were Team Canada," and blah blah blah. And he goes, "Yep. And you guys love me so much. Here you are, back again." And I just thought that was really funny.
Oh,
but
unfiltered.
Nate did leave the room as the media was entering. He got a couple. Hey, Nate.
No thanks.
Nope.
That's what I would do too.
Yeah, but I just want to weigh in on Toronto media because I saw it
good.
firsthand a couple days ago, and I was like,
I've seen so much about that.
I was like, this is morning skate. relax. Like, this is morning skate for a coach that you don't even cover every day.
Yeah.
And they had, like I said, almost 15 minutes worth of stuff. But
that makes a lot of sense.
yeah, I'll get out of here.
Thank you so much, Jesse.
Bye, Jesse.
Jesse's first Pucks and Prosecco appearance. Everybody, give it up for Jesse.
Oh, I think it must be a Canadian thing, because I even think about the post game when somebody asked Draisaitl, why is he so pissy?
And he knew the reporter by name.
Yeah.
So I think it's a regular cast of characters, and it's well attended. I did actually cover a Toronto-Calgary game in Toronto during Hall of Fame weekend last year. And what Jesse just described is what I noticed, that it was an aggressive media availability. It was hard to get a question in. I tried talking to Nazem Kadri. I actually did get a single question in. I was amazed.
Yeah.
And so I can validate what Jesse's saying. It's very aggressive. You know, you kind of have to pick your lanes too here in Colorado, but not anything close to what I saw.
Yeah.
So,
well, if any of the players are watching, good thing you have Colorado media people.
That's what I think makes like Jonathan Drouin so sweet with us, is he appreciates that we're just a little more relaxed, a little more laid back, and we don't hammer in questions. So I do wonder, this next topic I almost forgot to include, but we will not forget it this time. Let's talk about Macklin Celebrini and his rookie season alongside Connor Bedard's rough ride in Chicago, obviously in his sophomore season. So there's context there too between both of these players, but you can physically, observably see the difference in the years these players are having. And I can't help but feel terrible for Connor Bedard. I also wonder if a little bit of it is just the natural sophomore slump. Like even, Nathan MacKinnon and his sophomore season had 38 points, which is the lowest points total that we would ever see Nathan MacKinnon have. It just continued to ramp up after that. The sophomore slump is a real thing, but the vibes are very bad in Chicago.
Yeah.
And the vibes are, despite not having a winning team in San Jose either, pretty great around Macklin Celebrini and his best friend, Will Hockey Smith. I see people have to make that distinction, like if you are Googling tags and things. Will Smith, the actor, comes up.
I mean, I would never.
Will Smith Hockey.
I don't know, but Will Hockey Smith is funny because I guess when you're talking to people that don't really know about it, they're like, Will Smith? Will Smith plays hockey? You didn't know?
Yes, he does.
Crazy. Bedard looks miserable. It's really sad, but I don't blame him. I mean, I think the Blackhawks are giving him nothing at this point. Like, I feel like he's there. He has no help. He also doesn't have a best friend there. And I think Celebrini got really lucky. I don't know if he would be having the same season if he didn't have Will Smith with him. I'm sure he would in a way, but those are the first two teams to get eliminated from the playoffs, and they are at very different points vibe-wise. Yeah. And it's very, very interesting that these two prospects can have such different seasons like this.
Yeah.
I shouldn't even say prospects because I'm not really prospects, but
no, I think it's fair to still call them that. They're both so young and they're trying to figure out what they're going to be in this league on struggling teams. And so that means assuming more responsibility than you see 18, 19-year-olds typically have when they first enter the league.
Yeah.
It's such a young age to inherit that much responsibility. And, when you have the first overall pick draft pedigree, there's also the pressure of being the franchise cornerstone and being the piece that helps to turn the page to a new chapter in a rebuild and brighter days. And so that's what makes it tough with Bedard, and where Chicago's at is they, in his sophomore year, they make pretty big changes around the deadline, namely Seth Jones being a piece that gets shipped out. And with Patty Maroon announcing his retirement, that's a veteran player that you saw had such a good relationship with Bedard. I just imagine that has to be tough to have probably known before he publicly announced it, that this would be his last season, that you're losing one of your leadership, I don't know,
Yeah.
role models.
Yeah.
Because side by side, San Jose, Chicago, both very young teams, but I still feel like they've handled things a little bit differently. I think there's a lot of youth around Celebrini. Like right now, he's been playing with Will Smith and William Macklin, and it's a really young line. But I think they've placed, with Toffoli, who's been that, like what Pat Maroon is to Connor Bedard is what I think Tyler Toffoli has been to both Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini. And it's such an important piece. And I think there's just a little bit more age spread out throughout the San Jose lineup than is captured in Chicago. And right now, the back end for Chicago specifically is almost entirely young kids. And so that's just going to be hard to win. It's going to be hard to get winning results with that. I love letting the kids play, but I think San Jose has recognized keeping a little bit of a mix, having some young and old on both the forward group and the back end side. That I think there's just a little bit more to get hopeful around too, because it's not as if San Jose didn't experience huge changes with Mackenzie Blackwood, this goalie that they adored and is an excellent goaltender.
And a great rapper.
See, the Sharks have fun. They do little sweater videos. And I don't know what is in the water there with Celebrini and Will Smith, but they have sleepovers with cookies and milk.
And the cars, riding around the cars on the ice.
Oh, wow, that was a little
like
scary.
That.
He fell.
Yeah, he fell and he was totally fine.
They murdered Sharky together on video.
Yes.
Joyfully, gleefully. Like, I don't know what they got going on in San Jose,
funny.
but
Maybe
it looks
their
fun.
social media people, too. Like, their social media people making, like, their profile pictures are like a really close-up picture of Celebrini and just really goofy stuff like that. I don't know what it is, but I think maybe they're just having fun. And I think not that they've accepted that they're not going to win many games, but I think they know, like, hey, we're probably not the best team in this division. And so we need to go out there and we're going to play our best. But like at the end of the day, we love this sport and we want to play hockey and we think it's really fun.
Yeah.
And we're just going to go out there and play regardless of what happens. The vibes are going to be pretty good. And in Chicago, it's just not like that.
They need to have some bets, like if we each score, we have a sleepover, like San Jose did. I think they need to create winning scenarios they can rally around that aren't just measured in actual wins. And so it could be fun little things like that.
Yeah.
And I think Connor Bedard does kind of need a friend. There is a lot of youth represented in that lineup, but I don't know if he's quite bonded the same way that Celebrini and Smith have.
Yeah.
And Alyssa in the comments made a great comment too about the differences in these teams and their coverage. One's an original six team and one is a West Coast team, much smaller hockey market objectively in San Jose. And so I think there's a big spotlight on Bedard in Chicago. And because it is his sophomore season, there is that urgency of, all right, well, let's get this thing going. Let's get this rebuild started, guys. Bedard, take it away.
Yeah.
And I do think that's going to be, a challenge for the young guys in San Jose next year. But I think they have more to get hopeful around. I think they have a great young goaltender in Askarov that, goalies are tough. You don't want to put them into a starter's net way too soon. You want to give them support even their first full season in the NHL. But I still think in the way that Dostal has ascended as a really great starting option with a Gibson alongside him in Anaheim, I see that being the future path forward for San Jose. And it's just a lot more optimistic than what I'm seeing for Chicago.
Yeah. This comment is the way I feel it is being portrayed. Chicago is having a bad season only because of Bedard, while the Sharks are having a bad season due to the whole team being bad, yet still growing. I think this is completely right. I think Bedard is getting blamed for everything that's going on because he is their key player. Whereas you look at the Sharks and yes, you have Celebrini and you have Will Smith, but it is the whole team.
No, it's true. I think that focus that Alyssa in the comment mentioned, with it being an original six team, it's just extra in that case. And so the criticism is heavy.
Chicago.
It's applied. You're so extra, Chicago. You need to be nicer to Connor Bedard.
Oh, you know what too? San Jose is so nice and sunny.
Yeah.
And Chicago's so cold and wintry. What if he just has seasonal depression?
They need to get him like a little light therapy device,
Exactly.
a hatch alarm clock, so that he can wake up with some light.
Get Connor Bedard a hatch alarm clock.
Connor Bedard a hatch alarm clock.
But it's true. I mean, what if everybody's just really reading into this and he actually loves it in Chicago, but he's just a little depressed because it's winter, spring.
Yeah, this is the time of year we can really start to see if he perks up, starts wearing some pastels, then we'll feel much better about this whole thing.
If Connor Bedard wears baby yellow tomorrow, he's cured.
He's fine.
He's cured.
But if he doesn't, I do think they need to focus on getting Bedard happy again. I will also say, I think that's just who Bedard is as a player. He cares a lot, and I think he wears a lot of that pretty heavy on his shoulders by choice because he is a competitor at every level. Before the National Hockey League, he has been a winner and a difference maker on teams, and I think it's hard to not be the same difference maker that you once were.
Yeah.
I still think that he can be, and I'm cutting him some slack. He's really young, and hopefully he shows up in baby yellow the next time we see him. Okay, I'm so excited. We've got our final topic of the day. It's the very basis of this show. This past Sunday, the Bruins lost their 6th straight game, 7-2, LA, Boston. It was actually a close game at one point. It was a 3-2 game, and Kuemper was interfered with. He took issue with it. He hit the player, and they were actually both going to be penalized, one for goalie interference and for Kuemper knocking the helmet off. But Jeremy Swayman didn't like that Kuemper responded in that way. And so he pulled up to center ice and he ditched the blocker and glove, and Kuemper pulled up too. They were ready to throw down, but the officials intervened. You could see Swayman even trying to evade the official to make it happen. He really wanted to fight Kuemper, and Kuemper was ready to answer for it, but it got broken up. Swayman said in the postgame, he touched one of my guys, and I think that was something that I'm not going to accept. And kudos to him. He stepped up, just got broken up. I think it just comes down to sticking up for my teammates. Swayman is a goaltender that has tried to fight other goaltenders before, so I know that he's not here to tell us himself, but we wanted to ask goalies if they want to fight first and foremost before we as fans weigh in if they should be allowed to without interruption.
Right.
I want to know if they even want to.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Swayman's tried to fight Montembeault and Joseph Wall, so I feel confident he's cool with goalies fighting.
Yeah. You can see it in his eyes. He's got the crazy eyes.
You can see he's got a lust for fighting. And we weren't able to ask Blackwood and Wedgwood today, but we did plan to pull some goalies, and I actually have pulled 2 goalies, and they also both would like to fight. 120% was one of the answers that I got. So I feel pretty confident saying that a decent amount of goalies are in on this, that you should let them decide, right?
Yes.
Let them be the ones to dictate if they throw down. I will say this specific goalie fight was a little controversial, because Boston did lose pretty badly after that point when it was previously a 1-goal game. And Nikita Zadorov weighed in on the post game when he was asked if he appreciated that Swayman was ready to stick up for his teammates. Zadorov said, "Is that what that is?" Okay, I don't know, no comment. Which is crazy because I don't know. I get that they did eventually lose 7-2, which you look at that and that's a lot of goals against. So perhaps Swayman had, it's like you had one job tonight and you were ready to do a different one, which was
right.
fine.
It was a distraction.
It was maybe a little bit of a distraction.
Yeah. I mean, so my vote is yes. Goalies should be able to fight. I love goalies fighting. I think it's hilarious, and I think it's one of the best parts of hockey is watching goalies fight. It's so funny, and they just want to be a part of it like everybody else. If your whole team gets to fight, why don't you?
Because sometimes you'll see the goalies go right to each other in this camaraderie way, like, man, look at these guys, right? Am I right? And they don't necessarily want to fight. And I feel like they can both mutually decide that. Whereas other times they do want to tussle and they want in on it equally.
Want to tussle.
They want to tussle so bad. And something Georgiev talked about when he wanted to fight Binnington for going after OC was that there's a difference in the equipment that they're wearing. It's not a fair fight when a goalie starts going after a player. So let the guys who have, equal equipment go after one another. And I think that's a pretty good explanation as to why they should just goalie to goalie be able to decide that for themselves.
There's so many stereotypes around goalies. Let's not leave them out of fighting.
That's what I'm saying, right? They already are kind of naturally othered by the way the sport is set up. And even wow, I'm telling Scott Wedgwood that Jesse said this. Jesse and Scott Wedgwood are best friends, but I think Wedgwood would be surprised to hear Jesse say that.
Yeah, he definitely would. We're gonna clip this right away and show it to him tonight.
Right
before he plays. Maybe he'll get distracted.
So Jesse claims that the goalies other themselves. I think the nature of the game really does it. They don't, when a goal gets scored, they don't get to be there.
Yeah.
I mean, unless it's happening to them, but you know what I mean? Like for their team, right?
They're so left out.
Will Wedgwood ever get to know the embrace of Ross Colton after a goal because he's super excited and happy? Yeah. Probably not. They're never going to be on the same ends of the ice. And that's sad.
That's really sad. I mean, I even think about, what if you're winning the cup, if you win the cup and then everybody's hugging and throwing their gloves off and everything, and then the goaltender is just 10 seconds behind, has to skate all the way across the ice, throw all of his gear off.
Wait for me, guys, and all the euphoria of the moment.
Stop cheering! And then by the time he gets there, it's over.
Everyone's already released the excitement, at least at its peak, and so he's getting the tail end of it. A few people weighing in the chat. Goalies are subject to the same rules regarding fighting as other players, but they can face additional penalties for leaving their crease to engage in a fight, and that's often seen as an escalation of conflict. So I think that's what's keeping maybe some goalies from pursuing more fights. I also think it's a unique situation when a goalie gets rough with a player and the other goalie wants to fight him. I don't see it that much. So I don't feel we have to worry about this happening with great frequency to where the league or the officials need to intervene.
It's not a concern.
Exactly. So when it does happen, which isn't often, just let them do it.
I think somebody, after we put up a post with Kat talking about if you were Gary Bettman, then what would your rule be? I think somebody commented and said, let goalies serve for penalties. So if they were to fight, then they would have to go in the penalty box, and then it would just be 2 minutes or 4 minutes of pure chaos.
That is a little crazy. I don't know. That's when we were talking. We wanted to start subbing in different goaltenders for shootouts specifically. We just have a lot of rules around goaltending that I think we and the league and Gary need to hammer out together, because I don't think there's enough goalie representation in this conversation, right? And I think somebody needs to advocate for the goalies.
We need JJ.
I wonder what JJ would say.
Jesse, will you text JJ and ask him? Because I bet JJ would say that he always wants to fight the other goalie too.
I bet so, right? Again, it's not happening all that often. Someone said, Mr. Wasted Talent 34 said goalies are too weird to let them fight more.
Oh,
I don't know. I think they should be allowed.
I think they should be allowed. I don't think that there should be a rule telling them that they can't do it if everybody else gets to.
Yeah, you cross center ice, it's a game misconduct. I think that could be modified, because it is just, I mean, where else is this fight is going to happen, right? Somebody's going to have to cross center ice. So,
or wait till the end and take it outside.
And the goalies are fighting in the streets. They're taking it to the streets. Honestly, that could be the ADHD. If we're going to pretend to care about goalie safety,
you're right.
We need to have this conversation. All right, Scott Wedgwood can get run over in net. Are we on time? Is it bad? We heard it from a real goalie.
JJ said, F yeah, they should. Goalies should get to fight.
They should. Do you think they're too weird to fight?
No.
I don't either.
I don't think Scott Wedgwood. I think Scott Wedgwood has a really good personality. I wouldn't say he's weird.
I think they're both
Meghan obviously thinks otherwise.
I think they're both a little weird, but they're more normal than other goalies.
But goofy.
They're
not
goofy.
weird.
No.
When I think of the stereotype of goaltender, it's oh man, you don't even want to be. I'm not gonna say that, but they're weird. They're very, very different from the rest of their teammates. And
yeah,
Blackwood and Wedgwood, I think, are just a little goofy.
I think they're normaler because I've
normaler.
heard from other players, there's usually a little bit of a divide with some teams in their own goaltender. The goalies just kind of hang out to themselves, maybe with some of the defensemen, and then that's kind of the click.
Mhm.
Whereas with Blackwood and Wedgwood, I think they've integrated with the whole team, and it's a testament to their normalness.
I completely agree.
I'm sorry, we were in the middle of the goalie interference conversation, but then we got JJ's update that goalies should definitely be able to fight.
Mhm.
And it was this. If we're going to prevent the goalies from fighting, I'm not even sure the clear reason is for their safety or what, but we need to start actually caring about goaltender and their safety and not let Scott Wedgwood get run over. I think Scott Wedgwood should be able to fight whoever didn't call goalie interference.
The ref.
Didn't
we have this conversation yesterday?
We did have this conversation.
If a referee misses a goaltender interference, then the goalie gets one swift punch at the ref.
Well, those are all the rules that I think need to be changed.
I completely agree. I hope you're listening, Gary.
Gary, we have a really good idea. Okay. I have gotten some comments on Twitter in response to the question. Let's see. Absolutely. I also think they should be able to play the puck anywhere with a caveat of when they're outside their crease or the trapezoid. They're considered a player and can be hit as normal. Okay. Honestly, I haven't seen one person say that goalies shouldn't be able to fight uninterrupted.
Yeah.
Can you think of a reason why they wouldn't be able to?
No, I think the only reason that I just think goaltenders are more scarce. So you don't want to go in and have your goalies fight each other and then your goaltender gets hurt and then you have a backup that goes in. Maybe they potentially fight each other and then you're down to your e-bug.
Yeah.
That
would be crazy. But you're right. I mean, even if it's your starter gets into a fight, sustains some kind of injury that's going to take a couple weeks to heal, and then you just don't have your starter for weeks.
Right.
Maybe that liability is where in the pressure, or what's the word I'm looking for? In the heat of the moment, a goalie might not make the best decision around that type of thing. And so maybe it's the league trying to baby the goalies.
I think it is. Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to infantilize the goalies and let the other players fight when they have risk of injury as well. It just feels pretty unequal.
Yep. I totally agree.
Yeah. As long as they drop their equipment, blocker, gloves, and stick. No punching with equipment on. That would be pretty unfair. Well, I think we've solved it then. Goalies should be allowed to fight uninterrupted. That's the Pucks and Prosecco take.
Should we do?
Oh my god, I forgot about the burn book. I'm so sorry.
No.
Yes, we should.
This
we have
is perfect. It's
one
great timing.
burn book entry, and it actually is pretty perfect for this.
Here it is.
Here he is. It's Corey Perry. And you know what? The reason he is a feral little animal, it's also because he intentionally sat on JT Compher's ankle and tried to injure him.
Yes.
But he was also weird with Kuemper in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So he's just somebody that there are guys who play with a little bit of an edge and toe that line, and you want them on your team, blah, blah, blah. I'm still just not really convinced that I'd want that in the form of Corey Perry on my team.
I just have to say that Meghan sent me this picture, and it was just titled Feral. That was it. No context behind it. So I had no idea what I was opening here. What I will say about Corey Perry, Corey Perry can come out of the burn book when he wins a cup.
Oh, Corey Perry. He is, I
It's a
think it was what,
curse.
he's been to 4 or 5 finals and has only won in one of them, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So tough. It's like, all right, you are on teams and you are part of getting them to the Stanley Cup final.
Mhm.
That is huge.
Mhm.
But can't get across the finish line. I'm not going to pin that squarely on your shoulders, Corey Perry. I think that his numbers in Edmonton have actually been pretty good
Mhm.
because I was looking comparatively, like what they pay him, I thought was a little bit rich for a fourth line player, but his production has been a little bit above that.
Mhm.
So that's fine. But I still don't know that I love the brand of hockey he plays. There was an interview that Nichushkin had done in Russian after the Cup, kind of addressing this type of player, and
Yeah.
he condemned Corey Perry. Like, there are guys who do this well, and I respect it,
Mhm.
and I didn't respect the way that Corey Perry approached this. So
Yeah.
I'm going to take it from Val and an actual player in terms of, do I want
Mhm.
this guy? Is Jesse going to weigh in on if he likes Corey Perry?
Oh, no, he went to 5 in 6 years, lost all 5, and the only one that he won was back in 2007, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he went to 5 in 6 years.
All right,
lost all
So
5 and
it-
6.
It's not, I mean, a lot of people say that it's a curse, but I do think when you're really looking at it, it is just because he hasn't found his team. And I do think Edmonton is a good fit for him, but it is just funny that, like I think it was he played for Dallas and then they lost to Tampa, and then he played for Tampa and then they lost
Right.
to the
They were going
Avs
for the
and stuff like
3-peat.
that.
So it's like, yeah, we can't lose. This is a dynasty.
Right.
And then the Avs came into the picture.
Boom.
And
So I just think that's funny.
I don't know. I'm not going to be that dramatic about Corey Perry because I don't feel as strongly as maybe some of the other guys we've put in the book.
No,
But
I agree.
intentionally trying to injure JT Kuemper and being weird and crashing the net like into Darcy Kuemper, though not the one who injured his eye, Ryan Johansson. I am not crazy about Corey Perry, so you will go in the burn book for now.
Exactly. And when I said somebody said he already has a cup, but I'm saying he'll come out of the burn book if he's able to win a cup after this curse has started.
The curse of the finals appearance.
Exactly.
It's a very
we'll
monkey
see.
paw.
We'll see
like,
what
your
Edmund...
team will go to the finals if you have Corey Perry, but you will lose. All right. That's all I have for today. I almost forgot about Corey Perry. I'm so sorry.
Gosh.
I almost forgot about Connor Bedard in the rundown.
Corey Perry.
The goalies dominated everything today. I got excited.
Mm-hmm.
Tunnel vision.
Mm-hmm. And it's perfect because we're playing Detroit tonight.
Yes.
And talking about Patrick Waugh and goalies fighting.
Goalies
so I think
fighting.
this was perfect for that.
OGs, remember my Twitter handle was Right by Waugh for another Right by Waugh. That, I don't think anyone needed a visual of that. We can end the show now.
I love it.
Goodbye, everybody. We'll be back. Well, Chloe will be going on a trip. But we'll be back with Pucks and Prosecco, and Chloe will join us again soon. Everybody say bye, Chloe.
I know.
Have a safe
Sorry,
trip.
I won't see you guys not next week, but the week after. Woo!
She's wearing pastels.
Woo!
Bye.
Bye.